It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here with you this evening at this particular gala for the Marcus Garvey Foundation project, the memorial project, which is the dream project of many of us, but of course, most specifically, Mrs. Buchanan. And it's a dream that she has carried with her and is making into a reality in terms of the Marcus Garvey Memorial Centre, which I think, all of us who are Pan-Africanists, and again, if we're Pan-Africanists, I think we're all Garveyites in terms of his particular brand of Pan-Africanism, because I think that was the foundation of the Pan-Africanism of Kwame Nkrumah, and what is most needed still at this point in time in terms of Africa, as well as in the diaspora. Because of course he favored the link with the diaspora as the sixth region. And he always said, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. And he conceptualized the Federal United States of Africa way back in the 1920s and early 30s, when that was not heard of and wasn't even a dream. So Marcus Garvey was a dreamer, and Mrs. Buchanan is also a dreamer in terms of trying to contribute to the legacy of Marcus Garvey by creating the Marcus Garvey Memorial Centre, which, as I understand it, will be encapsulating so many of the ideas and things that Marcus Garvey initiated in terms of economic development, education, entertainment, living quarters, and generally speaking, culture, and overall education, because as Marcus Garvey said, that certainly we have to teach our youngsters history and educate them relative to who we have been in the past, and therefore who we can become, because history is the landmark by which we are directed into the true course of life. And the history of a people, of a race, is the guidepost of that people's destiny. And a people without a knowledge of their origins, history, and culture is like a tree without roots. So this is certainly one of the concepts of Marcus Garvey, which I see that the Marcus Garvey Memorial Centre is definitely going to carry forward. I think it's important that we all support a project of this type. We all have our individual pet projects, but the scope of this is excellent, and it is significant from this perspective that it is holistic, and it contains much of what is needed by the individual, what is needed by the community, because we need a transformation of our an individual, so to speak, from the dependency that we have inherited because of the 500 years of miseducation that we've suffered under. And we need to uphold the principles of Marcus Garvey in terms of education, that man is the individual who is able to shape his own character, master his own will, direct his own life, and shape his own ends. Man is therefore the architect of his own fate and master of his own destiny. This needs to be inculcated by an educational system, which, as I understand it, will be incorporated into that memorial center. As Marcus Garvey said, that no people can really function without a strong economic base. As he said, every student of economics knows that the race can only be saved through a strong, solid industrial foundation. Take away industry from a race and you have a group of slaves. a race that is solely dependent upon another for its economic existence sooner or later dies. And we've seen that at the present time, that as Kwame Nkrumah has told us, after we supposedly got away from colonialism in the 60s, whether it was 1960 or 1957 for Ghana, of course, or 60 for Nigeria, and in the 60s for pretty much the rest of the continent and from the Caribbean. And so we got out from under colonialism, but as Kwame Nkrumah said, we are of neocolonialism, and we see it now in the continued presence of France and the Francophone countries, and we see the United States and many other European countries. We see Japan, we see China, we see India, all seeking the resources and utilizing the resources of Africa as raw material, moving the raw material out of the country and selling us back the manufactured goods at elevated prices. So we're subsidizing the rest of the world instead of using our own resources to develop ourselves. As a result, we have our youngsters fleeing the continent, moving across the Sahara, being enslaved in different places, drowning in the Mediterranean, and being despised and rejected in Europe. So we have to correct that problem. And certainly one of the ways to do that is to teach our youngsters about themselves and who they are and their own capacity in terms of their God-given ability. And the fact is that each of us has a purpose in life. And that purpose is really to develop ourselves maximally, and also to develop our family and develop our community and develop our nation. And we have that ability, and there are no obstacles really that can prevent that, because this is a God-given talent, and it's a God-given duty. So education is of great importance. As Marcus Garvey said, the battles of the future, whether they're physical or mental, will be fought on scientific lines, and the race that is able to produce the highest scientific development is the race that will ultimately rule. So we have to liberate our minds from mental slavery, because whilst others can free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. So we need to do all those things that Marcus Garvey started out doing, and I think they're part of the program of the Memorial Centre, meaning that the industrial base to develop people, to teach people, whether it's in terms of different trades, or whether it's more sophisticated in terms of engineering and medicine, literature, and so on, to develop those skills that are necessary in terms of a modern nation. We need the nurses, we need the medical profession, and we need people who can be of sufficient character to be strong enough to defend ourselves in terms of our community, in terms of our nations. As we see at the present time, there are many different military groups that are all over Africa, whether they're French military groups or from the United States, or even China now is bringing its own police into Africa to police its own people, so to speak. So these are negatives that have to be corrected. And hopefully the Marcus Garvey Memorial Centre will be a nucleus where much of this will emanate from. It indeed is indeed fitting to see how this is being borne out, and it is indeed fitting to see that we've had outreach from Africa during 2019, especially from Ghana, and now we are responding from the diaspora with beyond the return, so to speak. And we have to, in the diaspora, we have to return not only with concepts, but we have to return with resources in terms of financial resources, as well as skills. Many of us have developed significant skills in the diaspora, and we have to bring those skills, back to Africa in order to help Africa to develop. And so those of us in the diaspora have to join with Mrs. Buchanan in this dream project of hers, the Marcus Garvey Memorial Centre, to build it, and then to sustain it, and then to expand it, so that it will have significance, not only in Ghana, but certainly in all of West Africa, and perhaps in all of Africa. And then again, we can duplicate this as we go forward. This is a great time in terms of, shall we say, the chaos that is present because of the pandemic. I think it has opened the eyes of many people to see the way the world is set up. And the fact is that Africa and African people all over the world are very much dependent on Europeans and people outside of our continent for even food. We import so much food when, for example, in Africa, we have 60% of the arable land of the world. And yet still we import food. I mean, and that's just one thing. And we're not going to go into all the different things that we have, whether it's oil or mineral resources, etc. But it's all there in Africa to be developed. And all we need is that turn of mind. We need the Garvey mind. We need to liberate our minds from mental slavery. And we need to be able to take charge of our own self in terms of mastering ourselves, so that we can work creatively towards our own destiny, which is a destiny of our fulfillment of our purpose as a people, and the prosperity of our people. And then bringing civilization back to the world. We are the first people, we had the first civilization in Kemet, and it lasted for 3,000 years, which is the longest of all civilizations. And it communicated civilization to the rest of the world. Now, what we have had is it has spread to some areas, but other areas have maintained an ignorance of self-identity, and think that self-identity is just a physical self and an ego, which is just a superficial aspect of one's humanity. So we have to bring African humanism, back, not just for ourselves, but to save the whole world, because the direction in which the world is going is chaotic. It's individualism, it's competition, it's each for himself, and utilizing the resources of the planet in a non-sustainable manner, while we befoul everything, the air, the water, the ground with so many chemicals, and create dead zones in the water, while we have all these different climate changes where the planet is going to become so hot as to be unsustainable for human life. So this has to change, unless, of course, we'll all be exterminated and we'll give the world over to the cockroaches, the bacteria, and the viruses. But I think this is a time for reset, and we have to see the fault of the system that has controlled us for the last 500 years. We have to break away from that, and then we have to create our own systems based on the ideology that Marcus Garvey has set us, that we up you mighty race, so we can accomplish what we will. And we can accomplish anything that we set our minds towards, because we have that God-given talent. God is in us, God works through us. We're made in the image of God, we're the first people. So, we have all of the things that God desired to place in a human being. And so there's no lack of resources for us to be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. So I think we should all join with Mrs. Buchanan and the group of people around her to contribute to and to help to build this Marcus Garvey Memorial Centre. I want to commend you on being here I want to commend you on contributing, and I want to commend you on continuing the legacy of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Thank you so much for having me on this occasion.